Formula 1 2025 season is fastly approaching, and I see quite a lot of these prediction videos online, so I thought I'd give it a go myself. And don't worry, your boys made notes. At the time of recording this video, hang on, see if I can show you, get some of that juicy focus in it. It is, if you can see that, the 23rd of February. The cars are due to hit the track in testing in just a couple of days' time, so I wanted to get this video out before then so I can remove any bias. Now listen, I want to get cracking, right? I've got 20 drivers to go through here. That said though, I do just want to preface with one thing. I'm basing a lot of this on last year's results. Given that we're at a technical regulation standstill until 2026, I think all the cars have sort of reached their limit or peak as to what they can do with design. My hope is that what we're going to see is a lot of similar design cars from previous season moving into 2025, which should give me a little bit more insight as to what to expect. I mean, saying that, Ferrari have completely redesigned their car, haven't they? So I digress. Now, more often than not as a rule, because there will be crashes, there will be things that happen, safety car, all that, so on and so forth, penalties, etc. It should only really be 2 positions to play for at any given weekend. The top 8 positions are likely going to be taken up by a Ferrari, a Mercedes, a Red Bull or a McLaren, which leaves only P8 and P9 to play for. That is obviously not a rule, as I just said, things happen, we see people get some crazy results. But if the field does level off this year, similar to what it does last year, more often than not, I think you might see that being the case. With that being said, let's get cracking. P20, I have put Gabriele Bortoleto. Now listen, the guy's got loads of karting trophies. He's the 2023 Formula 3 champion, 2024 Formula 2 champion in his maiden season. He's absolutely got the credentials to be on the grid. I just don't think he's got the car. If that kick Sauber is anything like it was last year, it's not going to be making any moves. It's a transition year for the team. Moving on to P19, I have chosen straight over to the seat next to Bortoleto, Nico Hülkenberg. Now listen, I rate Hülkenberg really highly. I need to get that out there. I can't stress it enough. We all know he's the greatest driver to never get a podium. Hülkenberg has an Alonso-esque way of getting the most out of an underperforming car. Last season at Haas, Hülkenberg scored points on 12 separate occasions. In fact, the only driver to score more consistently outside of the top 8 teams that I already mentioned at the beginning of the video was Alonso, who scored on 13 separate occasions. Look, I really want to be wrong. I just don't think that they're going to have the car. So P19, Nico Hülkenberg. P18, now this is lofty because we all know it's very likely this guy's going to get replaced by Colapinto, however many races into it. But I do think the Alpine's slightly better than the Kick Sauber, so if he does manage to stay, I think P18 is going to be given to Jack Doohan. Now, I don't really have too much to say about Jack Doohan. He seems like a solid pair of hands throughout his career. He's just got a middle set of results. There was a little bit of a song and dance made about his introduction to Formula 1 at Abu Dhabi because he made it up 2 places from P17 to P15. However, the reality is P16 actually became net last if you look at DNFs and Magnussen's massive lockup, so they were sort of inherited. I don't really know what else to say. It wasn't a great start, but he was chucked in at the deep end. Last thing I'll say on this, right, is that Alpine have never actually had a driver from their academy make it into Formula 1. So I do think there's a bunch of shareholders being box ticked here a little bit. They can say that they've finally promoted someone from the academy, get him in for a few races. If he doesn't do very well, Colapinto comes in, happy days. But I'm sticking to my guns. P18, Jack Doohan. P17 then, I've gone with Isaac Hadjar. Isaac? I hope I'm pronouncing that right, bro. Good to finally see Red Bull using their junior program for what it's meant to be. Juniors. No shade on Danny Rick, forever going to be a fan, but it is a junior team for a reason. On paper, Hadjar has got himself a reasonable CV. He was in contention for the Formula 3 title when his first go around. A few mistakes meant he ended up P4, but not a terrible start to his career. His first go around in Formula 2 wasn't the best. He ended quite far down in the grid, but he brought it back in spectacular fashion, finishing P2 last year. Now, before I carry on, I just want to touch on Formula 2 a little bit because we've got a lot of rookies coming into this season that have moved up the ranks from Formula 3 and Formula 2 specifically. If you're not aware, especially those that are watching this going, well, they should just give all the Formula 1 drivers the same car, they do that in Formula 2. It's called a spec series. A spec series meaning all the cars are made equal. Pay attention to this. Now specifically on the engine, the tyre supply and the chassis are all the same, but moving back to this, I say equal lightly because you've got to think that some teams are going to have bigger budgets, which means better quality parts, better experienced engineers, more resource. So yes, okay, on paper they're equal to specification. Doesn't always mean that the quality or the experience is always going to be there, but it certainly still allows you to see the best drivers all in the same car and who should be picked to move forward. It's also not uncommon to see people drive in Formula 2 that win the title with only a handful of wins, because where there's not one particular dominant car throughout the season, you tend to find that points are spread out a lot more. So in Isaac Hadjar's case, just bringing it back to him a second, now I've got to reference my notes for this. In 2 seasons of Formula 2, he's had 4 wins, 9 podiums, 1 pole position, 3 fastest laps, and best of all, we finished P2 last year. So safe pair of hands, I want to say. Is he going to get the better of his teammate Yuki Tsunoda? I don't think so. So yeah, P17, Isaac Hadjar. P16, I've gone with Ollie Bearman. Now, bear with me, get it? I live 15 minutes from a town, well actually it's a city now, isn't it? A city called Chelmsford. Not doxing myself here, but he's a local boy, big ups. Is this quite far down the list for Ollie Bearman? It really depends on the car. And again, I'm going to probably repeat myself quite a lot, but you've got to think that on any given day, there really aren't that many points pan positions available. So is he going to be the one to put it in there? We know the incredible first race he had holding off Lando Norris and holding off Lewis Hamilton. All right, both of those cars hadn't quite matured in the season at that point, but his first go out for Ferrari is incredible. Also deputised a couple of times later on for Kevin Magnussen, scoring points again. Has he started well? Absolutely. Bit of a risky one going for P16, but I'm sticking with it. Also, on top of that, he is a multi-record holder. Bear with me, get it? Record number 1, youngest driver to compete for Ferrari. Record 2, youngest driver to score points on debut. Now record 3, now this is the one that really matters, and bear with me, I did it. I did it again. I've got to read this one direct because it's a bit confusing. He's the first driver in history to score points for 2 different teams in his first 2 races. Now, whilst this is quite a strange record and you might think it is pretty irrelevant, to move into 2 different cars and score maximum out of it is not easy to do. We see it all the time. Daniel Ricciardo, when he moved from team to team to team and just couldn't quite get to grips with the car. So might seem insignificant, but I actually think it's just a telltale sign of a good driver. So yes, it's P16 a bit risky and a bit far down the list. It is, but I'm sticking with it. Ollie Bearman, P16. All right, P15. Just gonna show you this. I don't know if you can see or focus. I don't want it to focus. That's Lance Stroll's page. P15 is well generous, and arguably he should be further up the list, looking at the potential that that car has, hopefully in the second half of the season when Adrian Newey comes on board. It's the best midfield car on the grid right now. I just, what words have I got? I don't think he's going to be any further down because he shouldn't be, but will he be further up? Absolutely not. So Lance Stroll, P15. Moving on, P14, we're going with Esteban Ocon. Where do I start with Esteban? He's shown some really great moments throughout his career. Obviously, we've had the win in Hungary. He always does seem to be there when there is something to take in one of those moments where there's a safety car or something goes wrong in the race. Look at the podiums. Look at the P3 he got just last year in a car that arguably wasn't up to scratch. I feel like the Haas that he's going into is a bit Mercedes-esque in terms of one weekend it can be really great and then for 5 weekends it just isn't. I don't know where else to put him. I know I've used this word a couple of times already, but it's a safe pair of hands. I just don't think he's going to do any better than that, considering who's around him. But yeah, P14, Esteban Ocon. P13 then, we're going with the massive giant that is Yuki Tsunoda. Decent start to 2024. The car seemed to be a lot more consistent than a lot of the other midfielders. Outscored both of his teammates on multiple occasions, Daniel Ricciardo and Liam Lawson. 9 points finishes, his highest was P7, which he actually achieved on 3 separate occasions, which is pretty big when you think about the points positions on offer. Neither of his teammates did any better than him. So again, forgive me reading my notes, but Daniel Ricciardo scored 4 times, his highest was 8th. And Lawson scored twice in 6 races that he competed in, and his highest was P9. So Yuki done an incredible job last season. It could be a bit generous putting him in P13. It depends what the car does, but Yuki Tsunoda, P13. P12, I've gone for Alex Albon. I think this is a bit of a make or break season for Alex because he's finally coming up against a teammate who is arguably better than he is, and I mean that in the nicest way, but Carlos Sainz has been doing bits recently. I also think that by Williams securing a driver with the calibre of Sainz, they're probably looking towards 2026 and onwards, but at the same time, they're going to want to get off on the right foot, get their motivation going. So I do think they're going to be putting a bit of effort into the 2025 car. Well, what does that mean for Albon specifically? Well, we've seen a lot of evolution from Alex. Williams were pretty much bang last for ages, and they've turned it around to be quite consistently getting into Q2 for definite every time, but a lot of Q3 showings as well. Another thing to note is that Alex Albon lost 7 chances last year. He had the DNS when he wasn't well. He also had 6 DNFs, some from reliability, some from accidents and racing incidents. But 7 opportunities to lose points, I do think pulled him down the order a little bit, because I do think that car potentially has more to give. And I do think, again, they're going to want to show that pace this year. More for Carlos to bring him on board, but this is an opportunity for Alex to show us what he's got. So yeah, P12, we're going for Alex Albon. P11, I'm going with Pierre Gasly. Now, this one is a little bit of a stretch, despite the fact that he got P10 last year in the standings. The Alpine has been massively inconsistent, but I do really rate Gasly. I really want to see him in a race-winning car. We know he can do it. AlphaTauri 2020 at Monza. He's an incredible driver. I really do rate him. Again, similar to his old teammate Ocon, he's always going to be there to mount a challenge on his day, whether that be through safety car or whatever. A couple of seasons ago, when AlphaTauri, I think it was 2020, 2021, when the car actually had some real good pace, he really showed us what he could do. So I'm rooting for him. Don't quite think he's going to make it into the top 10 this year, but yeah, P11, we're going with Pierre. P10, the man himself, Carlos Sainz. Yes, a Williams in P10. I think Carlos is going to do bits. I think he's going to go straight in. I think he's going to be a #1 driver from the get-go, and he's going to show us what he can do. Maximum smooth operator.
That was a smooth operator.
Peak smooth operator. That's what I'm going to say, not maximum. Peak smooth operator. What a lad. I really think he's going to maximise the potential of the car. I think all the stuff that James Vowles is doing in that team at the moment is really going to value Carlos Sainz's opinion, and he's going to listen to him. All the times that Ferrari didn't, I don't think he's going to have that here. They're really going to respect his opinion. You've got to consider the fact that Carlos Sainz is one of the best drivers on the grid right now. Certainly one of the most tactical. Yeah, I think he's going to do it. P10, you might even be higher, but let's not get too lofty now. P10, Carlos Sainz. Another page with no notes on it here. That's because that is the other Aston Martin, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, our absolute Lord and Saviour, Fernando Alonso. He done it last year, why can't I do it this year? He is the absolute best driver on the grid, bar none. I'm going home. I appreciate that was a little bit fanboy and a bit heavy, but Alonso absolutely has my heart. If the Aston Martin stays consistent to where it was and doesn't get any better, and I think and I believe the car is going to get better, Alonso's going to be the one to put it there. All this stuff about Alonso getting frustrated and he needs to have a good season this year, otherwise he's walking away. That guy's got an opportunity in 2026 with the rules changed to get a world championship. That's not me saying for definite or looking into the future. However, the big regs change, I think he's going to want to stick around for, and he'll give it everything as he always does. So no notes needed. Fernando Alonso, P9, you saw it here first, have that. Right. The big ones, the top 8 positions then. You'll notice that I've stuck to what I said. It's going to be a Mercedes or a Ferrari or a McLaren or a Red Bull driver. Starting in P8, I've gone with Kimi Antonelli. It's actually Andrea though, isn't it? It's Andrea Kimi Antonelli. I see people call him Kimi, I see people call him Andrea. Let's be correct, Andrea Kimi Antonelli. This guy was probably one of the biggest names thrown around all of last season, where Toto took his sweet time to announce who was going to be in the car. A lot of song and dance made about the crash that he had at the Parabolica. Was it Parabolica in Monza? I think it was. Go and check and let me know. No biggie really. It's practice. They all crash. Unlike many of the other rookies coming in, he's had quite an accelerated journey into Formula 1. Completely skipped Formula 3. Had a sort of reasonable Formula 2 season. But I actually think the reason that they've gone with Antonelli is if you go back at his karting days, previous racing, he won near enough everything that he did. And if you follow karting, I don't really watch much karting these days, but I used to watch quite a bit of it, and it really is elbows out, raw talent wins the race. So that's why I think that they've gone with him, because otherwise the rest of his CV isn't particularly brilliant. But time will tell, and if the Mercedes is as inconsistent as it was last year, I don't really know where else to put him. So P8, Kimi Antonelli. P7 then, and I've gone with Liam Lawson. Look, I think the results do the talking here. Every time Liam's got in a car over the last couple of seasons, the results speak for themselves. I think he's really quite fast. I do think he's going to put, I was about to say Max for his paces. He's not, is he? He's not going to put Max for his paces, but is he going to be the closest teammate to Max? For sure. Will Max absolutely eat him alive? I don't know if that's the right terminology, but as we've seen, when Max gets a little bit threatened or things aren't quite going his way, he'll probably just ram him off the track. Nah, I'm joking. I love Max genuinely. A lot of the hate he gets, you're driving at 200 odd mile an hour. What do you expect? But with all the drivers left, right, Liam Lawson can't be any further down. He's in a Red Bull. He has to be doing bits. I just don't see that he's going to do any better than his teammate, and I don't think he's going to do any better than any of the drivers that are yet to be announced here on my predictions. So when's a prediction ever gone right? I'm going to be 100% wrong, aren't I? But Liam Lawson, P7. P6, I've gone with George Russell. Similarly to what I just said about Liam, I feel a bit bad here really, because I don't really know like where else I can put George. I think George is one of the best defensive drivers actually I've seen, unless he's about a million miles ahead of an Aston Martin and crashes in a wall and then blames Alonso for it. Not salty. Jokes aside, not over it. When you look at who's left, I can't put him ahead of a Ferrari or a McLaren because those cars are fundamentally better and the drivers in those cars are just as good, if not better, in my opinion, than George Russell. And would you put George ahead of Max Verstappen? I don't think you would you? So over a season at least. So P6, George, is what it is, isn't it? Sorry, bruv. P5, who's it gonna be? I'm hoping I've got some music playing behind this because I don't really know what I'm doing. I need to stop this now. Oscar Piastri. I'm going with Oscar Piastri. I really rate Oscar. I've not really written much here for Oscar, this little tiny bit. It's not going to focus, is it? It's just not very racy. I say that, you know, look at Monza, where he went around the outside at turn whatever it was, which is not really an area that you overtake after the chicane, on his teammate. That was really racy, so I don't want to contradict myself. But over the course of a season, there's been so many times where I just think, go for the move, and he just doesn't seem like he's going to do it. Is it maybe being calculated? Look, we've seen him nick a couple of wins, but I would just like to see him get his elbows out a little bit more. You can't reasonably go into 2025 assuming the cars are going to be similarly paced to what they were last year and not be any better than P5 and the McLaren. So that's where we're at. Controversial time. We are in the top 4. And I say controversial because P4, I've gone for this year's favourite to win the title, Lando Norris. Now, this is actually my 3rd video on this YouTube channel. I've wanted to upload more, but I haven't got around to it. My last video, I called Lando Norris our Lord and Saviour. Why? Because he challenged Max Verstappen. And what did we have for the rest of the season? A title fight, and it was incredible. He needs to fix his starts. We need to get that out of the way. Over 1 lap on qualifying, Lando Norris, exceptional, but he's got to fix his starts. And secondly, there's a few words that have been thrown around for this one. I can't remember exactly who said it, but someone said that he just lacks the killer instinct. And that's perfect. I really feel like when I watch other drivers, I watch Max Verstappen, I watch Fernando Alonso. Lewis Hamilton, Brazil 2021, was one of the greatest drivers I think I've ever seen. And when that Mercedes came over the hill, you just knew you needed to move out of the way because he was coming for you. Sheer killer instinct, sheer racer. There's not me for a second saying that Lando isn't a sheer racer. Incredible racecraft, so fast over 1 lap. But, oh man, just so many times I think, go for it, man. Nowhere near Oscar Piastri levels. I'm just saying, Oscar's just a little too chilled out. Lando quite clearly is a bit more fired up. But I just think it's not going to win him the championship. And I genuinely, that's how I feel. So, yeah, cry in a corner. Soza, top 3. Who are we going for top 3? Well, it's 2 Ferrari drivers and a Red Bull. P3, ladies and gentlemen, drum roll please. Another one of those moments where I wish I'd put music behind it. Like, that's a nice sound. What's that remind you of? Max Verstappen, P3, we're going Max Verstappen. Oh man, I really struggled with this one. I really do think that Red Bull are, okay, I don't think they're in decline. I've got to be clear on this. I don't think Red Bull are in decline. I think maybe from a team and an infrastructure perspective, I understand why you might feel that way. I just think everybody else has caught up. At the beginning of the video, I said these technical regulations have sort of peaked and reached their limit. It's not me, sorry, just before I carry on, saying that I know how to design a Formula 1 car, but there's lots of designers who have said the same thing, that there's a bit of a ceiling. They were quite surprised actually at how much room there was at the beginning and how many different kind of takes people had. Over time, they've sort of peaked. So I don't think that Red Bull's performance is on the decline. I just think everybody else has sort of caught up. The other guys have caught up so well, they're kind of leaving Red Bull behind a little bit. But it is still Max Verstappen. And give that man a car and he will win. I think Max Verstappen is the best driver on the grid right now. Despite my previous joke about Fernando Alonso, that's just because I love that man so much. But I do. I think Max Verstappen is one of the greatest drivers to have ever lived. And yes, that's controversial. I get that. It doesn't matter how many times he wins, he still wants to win. He has the biggest killer instinct, to use the same term I used a moment ago for Lando, on the grid. So Max Verstappen, I want him to be higher. Am I being stupid for not putting him in title contention? I don't know. I think towards the end of the season, the Ferraris look so strong. So again, if they start anywhere how they ended, I think they're going to be hard to beat. So logically, all I can do is go for P3. Might shoot me in the foot. Definitely going to shoot me in the foot. Max Verstappen, P3 in the 2025 World Championship. Right, these final two, blank pages. I didn't make notes because I'm still sort of undecided. So I'm going to hang the book up and we'll pop that down there. Sorry if you just got a massive clip in your ears when I clap my hands, but oh man. Okay, P2, I'm going with, another drum roll please. Let's put action music on this time. Charles Leclerc. Yes, I get it, I can hear it right now. British bias, he's a Lewis Hamilton fan. I'm actually not. Well, I'm not a Lewis Hamilton fan. I really rate Lewis Hamilton, but he's never been my driver. I've made a bunch of jokes about Alonso in this video. I love Alonso, I really do. I don't care what country you're from. Like, makes no odds to me. I want to see races, racing, and that's it. That's what I love. Is there a bit of pride, the fact that Lewis is British? Does it hit me in the feels when he won his championships and stuff? Yeah, I can't say it didn't, but that really has never been a huge driver for me. I love Formula One for what it is, the sport. So it's no British bias, please take that from me. Looking at a performance perspective, looking at both of those drivers, I think Charles Leclerc is probably the fastest driver on the grid over one lap. In contrast, that really is Lewis's weakness right now. Is there a reason for it? Was he just unhappy over the last couple of years? Is he just used to winning? Was he throwing his toys out the pram? Who knows? But on a Sunday, Lewis Hamilton was incredible. We saw some amazing drives from him over the last couple of years. The British Grand Prix, in fact, I take back everything I just said about not being as patriotic, because I'm pretty sure I cried at Silverstone last year. That was genuinely a very emotional and wonderful thing to see. But I think it was just a great comeback story for Lewis. On Sunday, he really shows us his racecraft. It's just not shown as much when you're not up there all the time. But he hasn't not been, as he's still been driving really, really well. Saturday pace needs to be looked at. I was accused recently of quoting a Martin Brundle interview by saying that he's lost his qualifying edge. I hadn't seen the interview at the time, but I've watched it now and I completely agree. That I really think is Lewis Hamilton's big opportunity. But we've also seen some of the greatest qualifyings, can you say qualifying? Some of the greatest qualifying laps ever in Lewis Hamilton's hands. And I think we would just be so stupid to write him off. Absolute broken record time here. If Alonso can get into any car and still perform at the level that he does, there's no reason why Lewis Hamilton can't do it. He's a 7-time Formula One world champion. Some might say 8. Still not ready to talk about it. I genuinely think Lewis is going to be fired up. Yes, there's all the stuff in the media right now about Lewis being a lot slower in the shakedowns and whatever. They mean nothing. They mean zero. Until the lights go out on the first Sunday of the season, who knows? But look, that's it. Now, I also don't want to be unfair to not touch on Charles Leclerc as to why I've not put him there. One of my favourite things about Charles Leclerc is he doesn't quite know his limit. And it really reminds me of some of the things that Ayrton Senna used to say along the lines of, if you're a Formula One driver and you see a gap and you no longer go for the gap, you're not a Formula One driver. And all the times that Charles Leclerc has binned it into the wall or made a mistake, I truly think it's because he's trying to find the absolute peak performance and he's not caring about the limit. Is that a bit naive? Yeah, for sure, and I certainly think he's matured a little bit and he's improved and he's still lightning fast. But I do think with someone like Lewis Hamilton next to him, I know he's going to have the infrastructure of the team, but he's not Lewis Hamilton. And I really am putting my money into the cards that Lewis hasn't just got what he's got because he was in the Mercedes. I've got so many thoughts and feelings about Mercedes being the best car all those years, because as controversial as this is going to sound, there were seasons where I don't think it was the best car. We know the Ferrari obviously had some engine advancements that they weren't supposed to have, but 2017, 2019, I don't know, man. Like, I think he was on par all the Rosberg years, and Lewis Hamilton still manages to come out on top. His racecraft is exceptional. So I'm not taking anything away from Charles. Look, this is predictions, right? I'm going to be wrong on all of this, but I've tried to be as thorough and calculated. I've made loads more notes, but you'd be here forever if I was going through all of those. So that's where I'm at. I hope this video wasn't crazy long. I'm hoping I get this out before testing starts so that we get a complete unbiased view of things. Super hyped in 2025. That's it. Hopefully I'll make more than 2 videos this year as well. This is my 3rd ever YouTube video. I'd like to cover a bit more, but it just takes me so long to put the lights up and get the camera out and... hello. My battery ran out on my camera, so whilst I was complaining about things taking me forever, I thought, you know what, I can't be asked to put it back together and put more batteries in and do all that bollocks. So have a great season. Let's see how much I get wrong this year, and I'll hopefully make a couple more videos. Like and subscribe!